Hey guys, welcome to week 13 of the NFL season. This is the No Huddle Fantasy Sports NFL DFS Slate Playbook video here on the channel. Today is Sunday, December 6, 2020, and we're just a couple of hours away from kickoff for the start of week 13. It's been a crazy couple of weeks in terms of a lot of movement, a lot of changes, a lot of things you had to keep up with for DFS, but nonetheless, we've persevered. We're here for week 13, and in this video, as always, we're talking core plays at each position. We're going to give out a couple of plays at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end, talk in detail about why we're picking those players, and really get set for this upcoming Sunday. So whether you're playing on DraftKings or FanDuel, I've got all the information you need to set the best lineups to put yourself in the best position to win money this weekend in NFL DFS. So sit back, relax, let's talk NFL DFS for the next 15, 20, 30 minutes, hour, whatever it takes. This is No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Hey guys, and officially welcome to week 13 of the NFL season. This is the No Huddle Fantasy Sports NFL DFS playbook video here on the channel, where we're talking DFS for this Sunday, upcoming Sunday's main slate on DraftKings, on FanDuel. We're going to break down each individual position, give out core plays at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. All the information you need to succeed this weekend, this Sunday in NFL DFS. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, a lot of games moving around, so you're not going to want to miss this video. I've got all the research done, all the information you need right here, right now. This is No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Hey guys, what's up? Hope you're all doing well. Welcome back again to the channel. Welcome back to No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Today is actually good morning because it's December 6, 2020. It is Sunday. It is game day. We're talking DFS specific, NFL specific DFS for this main slate on DraftKings, on FanDuel. We're going to switch it up, do a little bit differently. Actually, we're going to stick to what we did last week, which is different than our typical playbook video here on the channel. We're just going to dive right into the app here, right into DraftKings this week. Last week we did FanDuel. This week we're going to dive into the DraftKings specific website, specific pricing, all that stuff here. We're going to talk core play. So all of this does apply, as always, to both DraftKings and FanDuel. The research we did up front, all the information I'm giving you was done in lieu of both sites. But we are sticking to what we did last week simply because things have been so crazy. In terms of the schedule, there's 3 or 4 games that have been moved around or moved off of the main slate. Obviously, we didn't have a Thursday night game. We now have, again, another Tuesday game. So with all of that going on, it's very, very difficult to put together the typical video I do here on the channel. So when stuff gets back to normal, I promise you guys we'll stick to that normal playbook video where I give out really, really detailed information that you guys can read as we go along. But still, same information is going to be given to you guys. Same research has been done. I just do not have the luxury with everything changing as fast as it is to give you guys that style of video, simply because it gets dated, it gets old, and it's really not useful if I put that video together on Thursday or Friday and then things change. So with all that being said, hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to week 13. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Give this video a like if it's helpful. We've been on fire here on the channel at No Huddle Fantasy Sports all NFL season, really. So we're going to stick to our same format here. I'm going to give you guys some quarterbacks, some running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. We'll talk about some other random positions that I'm interested in, but we'll stick to a couple of each position in detail so you guys have the ammunition you need over the next couple of hours. So let's dive right into it. You can see here we already started on the DraftKings specific website, but the first thing I want to do, as always, is direct you guys over to Daily Fantasy Nerd. This is the optimizer I always preach. I've used all season long. It's down linked in the description. You get a week for free if you click the affiliate link down there. But nonetheless, you guys are getting a sneak peek at this here. Talking Vegas lines, as always, or should I say, first and foremost, there are very, very little, if any, weather concerns on the slate. Several games indoors, but overall, there's nothing really to talk in terms of weather. But in terms of Vegas, we have several games above that 50 threshold over/under that we look for when stacking teams or stacking specific games. Those games include Cleveland at Tennessee, which is sitting at 53, Jacksonville at Minnesota, which is sitting at 51, Indianapolis at Houston at 50.5. Other games worth noting, you have a decent game between the Rams and Arizona, playing in Arizona at 48.5. And then finally here, Philadelphia at Green Bay at 49.5. So those are your games at higher over-unders, games where you're going to, again, want to consider stacking players or stacking games, because obviously Vegas is projecting a lot more points to be scored in those games. Other ones worth noting here, you can see Detroit at Chicago looking like a 44.5 over-under, not very attractive there. And then Cincinnati at Miami, 42.5. So take that with a grain of salt, because obviously teams can do something different any given weekend and can blow out Vegas totals. But those are two of the lowest, if not the lowest, on this particular slate. So something to consider there. Now, in terms of specific teams, what I like to do here, we can just go to this projected usage rate tab and just sort over here by Vegas totals. Right now it should be sorted by highest. But you can see Minnesota at 31.3. Anything above 30 is really elite, considering our experience so far this year. High 20s is what we're looking for. 30 and above is obviously excellent. But Minnesota playing at home versus Jacksonville, you have 31.5 or 31.3 for Minnesota. Tons of points to be had there. Tennessee at 30. Playing at home versus Cleveland. And then a couple of others worth mentioning. Seattle is projected 28.3 versus the Giants. Green Bay 27.8. And then there's several behind that at the 27 range. At the bottom here, though, we have Cincinnati only projected at 15.3 in terms of Vegas. The Giants only projected at 18.3. Philadelphia 19.3. And then finally here, capping off the teams below 20, the New York Jets at 19.3. So those are certainly teams that you can take a player from. I'm not suggesting you cannot do that, but overall those teams are below 20. You're not going to really want to consider stacking them unless you have some really good reason or some really good reason to go unless you have some really good reason to go otherwise. Those are teams I would be avoiding in terms of stacks, in terms of putting many players from those teams or those games in play. So those are kind of your Vegas totals. Those are always things we like to cover. Gives you the kind of the outlook on this particular slate. Outside of that, though, let's start by going to the quarterback position. That is the position we always start with. I will give you my top 2 players. We'll stick here. Actually, let's bounce back over to DraftKings. We'll start with DraftKings because you can see the pricing a little bit easier. But really, there's a ton of players on this slate to consider. Obviously, you have Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Watson, Herbert has been excellent. Rodgers is on this slate. There are a ton of options to be had on this slate of quarterback. But I'm really narrow this week. I think on DraftKings, Aaron Rodgers is underpriced at $6,800. Now, does that mean it's easy to stack him? It is not, because of the price of Davante Adams. But nonetheless, I think it's very difficult to avoid this $6,800 price tag on Aaron Rodgers. As a result, he's my number 1 play. I mean, you don't need much more. This guy has been absolutely excellent over the course of the season. He's probably the MVP favorite at this moment, considering Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson have fallen off at times. But his worst game here in a blowout versus Chicago, he still threw 4 touchdowns, had 211 yards on 29 attempts. Obviously, he has a really great connection with Davante Adams in the red zone. But before that, you can see just the totals here. 311, 3 touchdowns. 325, 2 touchdowns. 305, 4 touchdowns. He basically exceeded 300 yards in 3 of the last 4 games. Just multiple touchdowns every single game. 4 touchdown games, 3 touchdown games. This guy has been absolutely excellent. He even adds a little bit on the ground here. He has 2 or 3 attempts each game, sometimes exceeding 10 yards. So Aaron Rodgers squarely in play for me. Now, the opponent he is facing this week, Philadelphia, is a team I am definitely interested always in attacking at the quarterback position. The downside here with Aaron Rodgers, I'll give it straight out of the gate, is the fact that they are such big favorites. You can see as we head over to Daily Fantasy Nerd here and find Rodgers wherever he might be. $6,800 again, 27.8, really good implied team total, but an 8.5 point favorite playing at home versus a pretty bad Philadelphia team. Philadelphia turns the ball over a lot. They're having a lot of issues just generally on offense. So the downside is the risk is that it could turn into an Aaron Jones game or a running game. They could slow the game down in general. But that could be said in any game Rodgers has been playing in. And in Green Bay, they don't trail much, and he still puts up those crazy numbers. So I'm not overly worried about that big favorite on him. I just really like that price tag. I like the matchup here. And again, to give you guys some specifics on this particular matchup, we can head over to Pro Football Focus, where they grade coverages. You can see Philadelphia's coverage towards the bottom here, 25th overall if you sort this by coverage. So obviously bottom third of the team. And then in terms of points given up to the quarterback position, the Philadelphia Eagles kind of middle of the pack. You can see here 25th. So certainly not the best, but not the worst here. But more importantly, some other stats I wanted to pull out. I don't have them up here for you guys. They give up a 66% completion rate, which is 22nd overall in football. Obviously, I just said they 25th in terms of fantasy points per game, and then the fact that their secondary is graded so bad. So I think it's a great spot for Aaron Rodgers. I don't think you need to worry too much about the matchup in general. It is a good matchup. It's not the best matchup. In addition to that, it's just Aaron Rodgers at $6,800 on DraftKings. So definitely my favorite play for this particular slate is a safety net there in Aaron Rodgers. I think a good floor on him. Finally, the last thing I will mention about him, he's projected about third or fourth in terms of ownership at the quarterback position. So that just adds a little bit more to the fire here, and more of the reasoning is why I like Aaron Rodgers. Now, I'm going to save you guys some money. The second guy I will mention here is a guy I have not played at all this season. That is Jared Goff at $5,800. So we're coming down $1,000. And really the play here is in this range. If you're trying to play a $6,000 price range, Fitzpatrick's not playing. I think Tua's back. Rivers, Tua, Carr, Newton, Stafford, Ryan. I guess if Minshew's back, I'm not even sure if he's playing. And then Wentz. Goff stands out to me as the only quarterback I would have any interest in, just name alone, of that group. Maybe Derek Carr, but Goff at $5,800 in an excellent matchup versus Arizona. It's going to be the fastest paced game. That's number one thing I like about this. So you're going to see plenty of opportunity. In addition to that, unlike Rodgers, Goff is on the road. We do like to take road quarterbacks. And I'm not going to lie to you, Goff has not been very good this season. You can see here his most recent game at home versus San Francisco. Didn't even hit 200 yards through 2 picks. Previous to that, at Tampa Bay, an excellent defense. He threw the ball 51 times. They did trail in that game, 375, 3 touchdowns. But more importantly, I'm going to bounce back over to lineup optimizer here from Daily Fantasy Nerd, and you can see he has a great history versus this particular team. And I don't like to focus on history too much, but it's something worth noting considering he plays Arizona twice a year. It's a divisional game. 28 points, 27 points on DraftKings in 2019 versus Arizona. Played them in week 13, played them in week 17. Threw the ball a lot versus those teams. One of those games he had 400 plus yards. He had 300 in the other. 3 touchdowns in the second game, 2 in the other, 0 interceptions. Just excellent last year versus Arizona. And we're talking DraftKings here specifically, so you're getting bonus points for those 300 plus yard games. I like Jared Goff at this price tag. Now let's talk a little bit here about the matchup. If we go back to Pro Football Focus here, we're again sorting this. Arizona's defense is not the worst, but they're certainly not the best. And they're actually ranked 20th in terms of coverage overall this season. So, and that's by Pro Football Focus. So sort of bottom half of the league, a little bit even further down from that. So certainly not a matchup you should be scared of. In terms of fantasy points given up to the position, you can see here, again, 14th overall, middle of the pack, giving up 19.3 points to the quarterback position. So I do think it is a good spot for him. In addition to that, his wide receivers, if you focus in on matchups, his wide receivers are just in excellent spots versus Arizona this week. So if his wide receivers are in great spots, I think that it's a great spot for him. There are some additional things I think are worth noting here. Great offensive line advantage for Jared Goff this weekend, meaning he should have time in the pocket. I think Arizona, if we go back to Pro Football Focus here, is actually decent versus the run. I could be wrong here. Hopefully they're not. They're pretty much just the same. So basically their defense is not graded out overall. Very good. But in general, I still like him on the road here at $6,800. I like the spot for both of his wide receivers. I think it's an easy spot to stack and come back to with somebody like Hopkins. So Jared Goff, definitely my second favorite quarterback on this slate. And let's move over to the running back position. So a lot of options again this week at running back. Some really good headliners in Cook and Henry. Chubb is on this slate. I believe Josh Jacobs has now been rolled out, so that opens up some value. I think you can go a number of different ways here, but if you're going to stack Rodgers, you have to save money. If you go with Goff, you can really start to afford your Cooks and Henrys. So I'll give you a little bit of both here. You kind of know the strategy. It's going to be a mixed bag when it comes to, if I'm playing Rodgers, I can't afford the more expensive backs. If I'm playing, mainly because of the Rodgers Adams stack, if I am playing somebody like Jared Goff, I can get a little bit more creative here. But at the top here, Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry, both in great spots here. Minnesota in a great spot playing at home. They are a huge favorite. Dalvin Cook obviously checks all those boxes versus Jacksonville, but I believe he's going to be the highest owned running back. I could be wrong, but if you had to choose this week, and this is slightly dependent. If you're playing FanDuel, I definitely like Henry over Cook. If you're playing DraftKings, it becomes a much harder decision. But I do like the fact that Derrick Henry is going to be projected in the 15 to 20% ownership range, whereas Dalvin Cook's probably going to be in that 20 to 25% ownership range. Gives you a little bit of leverage here. Again, both of these guys, in my opinion, are in great spots. You could argue because of playing at home at such a big advantage. I think -9, -8 point advantage for Dalvin Cook in Minnesota. He's in a better spot, but you still can't deny Derrick Henry is just getting his, right? Regardless of the defense, he played Indianapolis, arguably the best, if not one of the top 5 best defenses at stopping the run twice in the last 3 weeks. He eclipsed 100 yards in each one of those games, averaged over 5 yards a clip the first time. He got better. He averaged over 6 yards a clip on the road the second time. He played Baltimore on the road, averaged 4.8 yards per carry. He's getting literally 20 to 30 touches per game on the ground. Occasionally he gets a reception. We can't really count on that, and that's why it's a little bit tougher decision on DraftKings. Nonetheless, it's really hard to deny what Derrick Henry is doing. He's playing Cleveland this week, and I think Cleveland is, I say this a lot, I think Cleveland is not as good as the numbers suggest versus the run. They historically have not been. They really do not have a great linebacking core. Their D-line is good at times, especially as a pass rush, but in terms of run stopping, there's nothing to suggest they got any better. Now, the numbers might suggest otherwise. If we go over to yards per carry given up as a defense, you can see here, if we find Cleveland on this list, Cleveland is 11, 4.1 yards per carry, so certainly doesn't stand out as a really good number that you want to attack. In terms of points given up to the running back position, again, not standing out as anything specific you want to target here. Cleveland is 24th, and then going back to Pro Football Focus, in terms of a rush defense, Cleveland is kind of middle of the pack here, 21st overall. So I tend to agree a little bit more with what Pro Football Focus is starting to suggest here. Bottom half of the league, possibly even bottom third of the league, Cleveland's defense. Again, you're talking Derrick Henry. He did it versus 3 great defenses in a row now. I still think Derrick Henry is squarely in play this week. Again, looking at some of his stats here, just a monster season. He's very expensive. But in my opinion, if you're going to pay up at the position, I think Derrick Henry, because of that ownership disparity between him and Cook, I do like Derrick Henry as my number 1 expensive back. But again, Dalvin Cook squarely in play. If you can afford both, man, put them both in your lineup. But coming down here a little bit, another guy I want to mention, going back to last week, week 12, Austin Ekeler, we got a little bit of exposure to him. I mentioned him as another consideration, and of course he did absolutely excellent, especially in the receiving game. He was not expected to play as much as he did, but he ended up basically becoming the lead dog again in that backfield. Their running back situation has been so bad without Austin Ekeler. I think their hand was kind of forced here. They obviously lost on the road. As a result, he saw a ridiculous amount of targets. 16 targets last week. On DraftKings, how can you pass that up? 85 receiving yards. He did get 14 totes on the ground for 44 yards. Not the best numbers, 3.1 yards per carry there. But nonetheless, I think it's very hard to pass up the fact that he's getting 16 targets. He's getting targets like, I guess, Alvin Kamara is getting, and Alvin Kamara is not getting them right now. So who's that guy? It's Austin Ekeler, in my opinion. Will you get 16? Probably not, but I realistically think you can continue to approach 10 targets, and on DraftKings, that's very hard to pass up. Now, Austin Ekeler is $7,100. He's the, 8th or 9th priced running back on the slate. Really like that. I do, again, expect Austin Ekeler to be a really high-owned guy. New England's defense is scary. You think about New England, they've always had a defense. They shut down teams. They shut down specific good players, good offensive players. They always seem to shut down your best offensive player. Hopefully that's Keenan Allen and it's not Ekeler. As a result, more passes get funneled to him. But I do want to show you, in general, New England has not been as elite as you think. They're middle of the pack, 4.3 yards per carry given up on the season. And then in terms of their actual ranking versus the run, they're not a team that's elite anymore. They're 24th overall according to Pro Football Focus. So definitely a team that I think you can attack on the ground. If you want points given up, again, we can sort this and try to find where they are ranked. 16th overall. So middle of the pack in yards per carry, middle of the pack in fantasy points given up to the position, and then bottom 10 in the league according to Pro Football Focus and grading. So Austin Ekeler, I think, is in a great spot versus New England at home this week. They are underdogs, but I think they are. We can go back and check that very quickly, but it doesn't matter to me. In fact, if he's an underdog, that's more attractive to me for Austin Ekeler. Maybe that lowers his ownership a little bit. No, they're slight favorites. Very surprising. New England in Los Angeles against the Chargers are underdogs. You're not going to see that every year. But nonetheless, I do really like Austin Ekeler. So we do have to save some money, though. Coming down the list here a little bit, one guy I do want to mention I think is in a great spot. I'm going to skip over somebody we'll come back to, but Myles Gaskin is probably my number one value on the slate. $5,900. He's starting again. He's coming back. He's been activated. As far as everything I read, he should resume the lead role, get kind of that same situation he was in last couple of weeks before his injury. You can see here running the ball 16, 18 times per game. He's not the greatest running back, but again, we're talking value here. His price tag is so low. He gets some targets out of the backfield. He was a 3-down back. Really good situation for him. Got a lot of red zone rushes too throughout those weeks. He was actually leading that backfield. I do like Myles Gaskin this week. He's playing at home versus Cincinnati. Cincinnati is one of the worst teams against the run this season. You can see here, going back to our list, Miami is a slight favorite at home. They're actually a big favorite at home at -10. You have to like that. So you have a 3-down back. He should be playing the majority of the snaps. They're huge favorites at home. They want to kind of slow the game down for Tua. Now, there isn't a great total on this game. It's 43, but we're talking about a running back. I think Miami, it's really what's holding that down is that Cincinnati total. But nonetheless, Miami running back situation is in a good spot this week. The matchup is great for him. Also, going back to our list here of yards given up per game, or yards given up per carry, 4.8, 28th overall in football is Cincinnati. So one of the worst teams in terms of allowing yards per carry. In terms of fantasy points allowed, again, one of the worst teams here. Cincinnati is ranked 10th, so they're and by 10th, I mean 10th most. So they're bottom 10 in the league in terms of giving up fantasy points to the running back position. And then last but not least here, we'll check our handy list over at Pro Football Focus, and we have to scroll all the way down here to 29th. So Cincinnati's defense, rush defense, is graded 29th overall in football. I really like Myles Gaskin. I think he's in a great spot, a great price here on DraftKings. I think he is probably my favorite. I said it, but I do really think he is my favorite value play at the running back position. Finally here, I think you can go a number of different ways. That the guy I will give you last on my list here is Miles Sanders, only because I'm going to be playing so much Rodgers. I think Sanders is going to be my running back to come back with. Has he been good? Not really. And Philadelphia has been really ruining his opportunities. This is their best player, their best offensive player, and they're really just not doing a lot with him. But his price is reasonable because of his recent performances. His current price over on DraftKings is $6,700. It has unfortunately come up a little bit, but overall is kind of where it's been all season. I still think it's something you can take advantage of at that price tag. Again, last week, 6 carries, 15 yards, only got a couple of targets out of the backfield. An abysmal game, in my opinion. But before that, he had some good opportunities. 66 yards against Cleveland. He had 85 versus the Giants. You saw him have really, really big games on limited carries versus Baltimore versus Pittsburgh. Two really good defenses. He is a guy that plays 3 downs. He hit from a perspective of snap plays, he's a guy that plays 80-90% of the snaps for this team. So nonetheless, this guy is an elite back that's just not getting the opportunities. I think he can get the opportunities this week versus Green Bay. He certainly needs to. Now, they are a big underdog. This is a very risky play, but he is, of all players on Philadelphia, the one guy I am considering coming back against Green Bay, against that Aaron Rodgers stack with. Now, Green Bay's defense against the run is not very good. You can see here they're allowing 4.6 yards per carry to the position. That's 25th overall in football. In addition to that, they are ranked 3rd overall in fantasy points given up to the position. So you can kind of see why I'm more comfortable given the situation for Myles Sanders than most. 24.7 fantasy points given up per game. That's Green Bay versus running backs. They get beat by running backs. That's the secret that people don't talk about for those Green Bay, one facing the Green Bay Packers. And you can see here, last but not least, checking our list here, the Green Bay defense, not as bad as the numbers suggest, but still outside the top 10 versus the rush this season, 12th overall in terms of a fantasy grade. So I do really like the spot for Myles Sanders. I hope that they continue to use him both on the ground and find creative ways to get him the ball. But he is my fourth guy I will mention to you guys in detail. Now, as I mentioned, there are a number of other plays. I talked about Dalvin Cook. I think he is squarely in play. I think James Robinson, the only reason I'm not listing him is because he is on the road, but nonetheless, this guy still has been able to get it done. He gets a lot of targets. He plays 3 downs. If you're not playing Aaron Rodgers, if you want to go with Aaron Jones, it's a decent spot for him in addition to that Rodgers stack if you go another way here. Nick Chubb, typically like him. I don't think I'll be playing him on the road. It's just not a position I like to go with Nick Chubb. Chris Carson, though, in a good spot. They are massive favorites, the Seattle Seahawks. He has not been getting a ton of carries, but I still think he's in a good spot here versus this New York Giants defense. And then finally, last but not least here, I talked about him earlier. Josh Jacobs is out, so you're going to see Devin Booker get a lot more carries, at least projected to get a lot more carries. He's not really standing out to me in any particular way. The Jets are okay versus the run. They're not the worst, even though you would think they are. But nonetheless, he's really, really cheap. $5,500. He should get the start this weekend or today. And then last but not least, I think I already said that, but there is one more guy at that price range that's David Montgomery. Again, I think David Montgomery is another guy that's just getting underutilized, but you can see this guy can do damage when given the opportunity. 103 yards versus Green Bay, team we're attacking with Miles Sanders. You don't need a lot of opportunity versus that Green Bay defense. David Montgomery gives you a prime example of that. Nonetheless, 103 yards versus that Green Bay team last week. He got 6 targets, 5 receptions. Trubinsky seems to target him a little bit more than Nick Foles, so hopefully we get that out of Trubinsky this week. But I do like him playing at home versus Detroit. Detroit's defense is one of the worst. Actually, they're 7th in terms of fantasy points given up to the position. Give up a ton of points to running backs, a ton of yards per carry, just a team you do want to attack on the ground. So that's kind of my total list at the running back position. Now let's bounce over to the wide receivers. I'll start off with obviously Davante Adams. We're going to be playing Aaron Rodgers. We're going to be playing Davante Adams. That's how it works. The thing here, I talked about Aaron Rodgers being underpriced. When you stack a $9,000 Davante Adams with him, he becomes basically the most expensive stack on the slate. So it is very, very difficult to fit Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers. I will fully admit that. We talked about some value plays at running back. I'll give you some other positional value plays, but I do obviously want to play Davante Adams for the reasons seen right here with Aaron Rodgers. This guy just continues to score touchdowns. I mean, look at this game log. 2, 3, 1, 1, 1. He has not scored a touchdown. What do I want to say here? He has not been without a touchdown since week 6 of the season. So this guy continues to just absolutely dominate week in, week out, regardless of the volume. His actual numbers that I will read to you guys, I think it's worth reading here. He's Pro Football Focus's top-rated receiver on the season. He leads all receivers in the NFL with a 33% target share. In addition to that, he has 22 red zone targets this season. And keep in mind, he missed several weeks of the season. He missed week 3, 4, and 5 of the season, yet he leads the league in red zone targets. He's top 10 in yards per route run this season at 2.96. Just everything you could want out of Davante Adams. Has a 38% team air yards. So not only is he getting targets, he's getting targets downfield. And his matchup's good. This week, it's ranked plus 23% by Pro Football Focus versus this Philadelphia team. So I do really, really like Davante Adams. There's nothing to suggest that, I would not play him with Rodgers other than price. It's very hard to fit him, I understand that, but Davante Adams to me stands out as the number 1 receiver to stack, obviously with Aaron Rodgers, but overall on this slate. But other guys I do want to mention here, if we're going to talk about Jared Goff, let's stick with some of those receivers that I would stack him with. It's Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, both priced fairly similar, $6,159 on DraftKings here. Cooper Kupp is probably my preferred play. Really good spot for both of these guys, as I mentioned, but plus 39% matchup this week, according to Pro Football Focus, versus this Arizona team. So a really, really good spot for him. That is top 10. And this guy, depending on basically when Jared Goff goes, Cooper Kupp goes. So if you believe in Jared Goff, you got to believe in Cooper Kupp that same time. I do like to stack with him. I do like both Woods and Kupp stacked with him. But you can see it's every other week, right? 20 targets, 7 targets, 13 targets, 5 targets. Let's hope this is a double-digit target week. I really do think it is. It's a higher, faster-paced game. Really, really good spot for him. So in terms of stats for Cooper Kupp here, just a couple I want to quickly mention. He's top 10 this week, week 13, in terms of the Pro Football Focus wide receiver cornerback matchup at plus 39%. So it's looking like he's going to be in an excellent matchup versus this Philadelphia secondary. Now, Philadelphia secondary in general is not graded that bad. They're not elite, but they're basically middle of the pack, just below middle of the pack in terms of a grade on a secondary. In terms of fantasy points given up to the position, again, kind of middle of the pack. I think they're 20. They might actually be 25th overall, which is not great. You want, top 10, top 15. But nonetheless, it's still a great spot. The matchup looks good. And Cooper Kupp himself, he's currently averaging a 25% target share for his team. If we go to his game log here, again, looking at some of the stuff, double-digit targets multiple games this season. One of them 20 targets. We would like to see that again. But nonetheless, he can garnish those double-digit targets when Jared Goff is really on and throwing the ball a lot, which I think will be this week. Last but not least, the reason I like Jared Goff, the reason I like the Rams passing offense is the simple fact that it's a high-paced game versus Arizona. They're going to move the ball fast, furious, a lot of ball movement in this game, both sides of the ball. So you do like that. You like those matchups. And then I will mention very quickly, Robert Woods also in the same boat here. If you need to save a couple of dollars, if you want to go a little bit different here, he will be lesser owned. That's Robert Woods. He's been a little bit more consistent, 8, 6, 15, 12. Again, those big games are when Jared Goff has big games. These are the two guys that garnish the most targets from that offense. So it's certainly guys you want to target with the stack here. He's also in a good spot. I will mention 30% or plus 30% Pro Football Focus matchup this week, cornerback, wide receiver matchup. Robert Woods certainly in play here. But other guys I do want to mention, guys that I think stand out at various prices. The first being Adam Thielen. Now, Adam Thielen is expensive. He's $7,300. I don't expect you to be able to fit this with your Davante Adams, Aaron Rodgers lineups. But he is back this week. I believe he was on the COVID list last week. Hopefully I don't get dinged for saying that word here. But nonetheless, he is back this week, and he's had some unbelievable games over the last couple of weeks. He's clearly the best receiver. I wouldn't say he's the best receiver. I do really like Jefferson, a part of that Minnesota offense, but he is the number one receiver for Cousins for that Minnesota offense. And if you suspect that Kirk Cousins is going to throw the ball this week, then I think Adam Thielen certainly is in play. As I mentioned, Dalvin Cook is in play. It's a good matchup overall. They are huge favorites, but I do really like this spot. The number one thing that stands out for me, Pro Football Focus has Adam Thielen a plus 71% wide receiver cornerback matchup this week. That's an insane number. Anything like 50, 60 is insane. He's at plus 71%. So I think on limited targets, he can really do a lot of damage this week versus Jacksonville. So I do like Adam Thielen if I'm going in that, mid to high tier range at wide receiver. He's back this week. I think he's in a good spot. But coming down the list here, I got to give you some value plays. Certainly have to, simply because we're paying a lot of money for some of these positions. So the first guy I do want to mention here is Perriman for the New York Jets. He's only $3,900. He has not been the best receiver in the world, but he's been pretty good over the last couple of games. What I'm seeing currently is it looks like the Jets are trying to push the ball downfield more. Typically want to play Crowder. Crowder is the guy that seemed to be the most consistent wide receiver. He's an inside receiver, gets a lot of targets, 10, 15 targets at times. But over the last 3 or 4 weeks, they've really, it seems like, changed their strategy to push the ball downfield. Perriman is that speed, fast guy that blows the top off defenses, and you're seeing his uptick in targets, 7, 4, 8 over the last 3 weeks. When he gets the ball, he's obviously doing some damage with yards. So he's had a couple of touchdowns, three total touchdowns over the last 3 weeks, including a double touchdown game in week 9. He missed a week in there, but nonetheless, I do like Perriman this week at this price tag. I think that the attacking the Jets secondary attacking the Las Vegas Raiders secondary is something I do like to do frequently, but I'm not going to do that with Darnold. You can see here they are ranked in terms of a coverage unit. Scrolling down the list here, that Las Vegas Raiders secondary is ranked 26th overall. So Perriman, the Jets offense, the Jets passing game is actually in a great spot. Does that mean I'm stacking them? Absolutely not. But they are a team that you can certainly attack through the air. And last but not least here, let's check. I haven't done this yet, but let's check the fantasy points given out to wide receivers. The Las Vegas Raiders are kind of middle of the pack here at 13th. So again, this is a value play, $3,900. I think he is in play. I think it saves you a ton of money at the wide receiver position. He's a guy that I'm considering playing for sure, just to really alleviate some of the salary here on DraftKings. The other guy I do want to mention here very quickly is Brandon Cooks. I at times am considering, and I will mention at the very end, playing Deshaun Watson as a third quarterback, but I think the guy I want to play from that team, if I had to pick, would be Brandon Cooks in terms of a wide receiver. Now, Indianapolis has been surprisingly bad versus receivers over the last several weeks. They're a very, very good defense. There's no denying that. But Brandon Cooks, to me, is the receiver I would want to attack them with. I think at his price tag, again, we're trying to save some money. He's $5,600. He's been pretty good since basically the firing of their coach. They've kind of turned things around here. You can see 9 targets, 8 targets. The last 2 weeks, only 5. But still, when he gets the ball, he has done some damage. 85 receiving yards in each of the last 2 games. And then before that, had a ridiculous amount of targets, 12, 9, 9, 9, 8. So hopefully we see the targets continue to stay in that 7 to 10 range. At this price tag for $5,600, I will take that. And again, he's playing Indianapolis. Indianapolis, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen big-time receivers do really, really good against them. So I think Brandon Cooks is in an excellent spot versus them. He would be the last receiver I'm mentioning versus that Indianapolis team. Let's talk tight ends. There's really one guy I'm going to be playing a ton of this week, and this is to save a lot of money. You can see here, if we go specifically to Tennessee, Jonnu Smith is going to be out at tight end. So that leaves basically one guy to start, and that's Firkser, whatever his name is here, Anthony Firkser, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. He's $2,500 on DraftKings. How do you pass that up? So I'm going to be playing him. We've seen Tannehill utilize his tight end at times. I'm not saying he's going to get 40 targets, but this guy gets 3 or 4 targets and catches a couple of balls, gets 4 or 5 fantasy points on DraftKings, and you've basically doubled his salary. You've gone 2x. So maybe we get more than that. Hopefully we get something crazy out of it. But this is a game changer in terms of salary savings for me. He's my number 1 tight end in terms of just simple facts. Tennessee is without their starting tight end. This guy's going to be number 1. He's $2,500. I believe that Cleveland has been susceptible to tight ends in the past. Basically anything inside. It seems like all of the targets against Cleveland get funneled inside, whether that's a good inside receiver or a tight end. So I think you're going to see a good opportunity for him to actually score some fantasy points. But even beyond that, you don't need a ton at $2,500. So I will be playing a lot of him. But outside of that, if we just go to all games here, your main guys are obviously in play here. Darren Waller, TJ Hawkinson. But the second guy I am considering is Evan Ingram versus Seattle. Seattle has been, if I'm not mistaken, one of the worst teams at guarding the tight end position. Evan Ingram is without Daniel Jones this week. Hopefully he still continues to maintain targets. You can see they really were starting to use Evan Ingram a little bit more. 9, 10, 10, 3, 9. Has been putting up numbers that I think you could have you expected Evan Ingram to have in the last couple of years, but just simply hasn't. So the matchup here, in my opinion, is pretty good. Seattle's defense has been giving up, again, a lot of points to the tight end position at times. Again, he's missing Daniel Jones. Hopefully it doesn't hinder him too much. But that is the tight end position in a nutshell for me. It's really one guy, and that's Firkser. But I will be getting a little bit of sprinkle of Ingram, and I'll get some of these other guys as necessary here. And that's really it. So this video took a little bit longer than I suspected, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully I gave you enough information for this Week 13 slate. As always, I thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hopefully you guys enjoy these videos. Please make sure you're subscribed. Give these videos a like. Besides that, I wish you guys the best of luck, and I will check you in the next video.